Hey everyone. Basically listening to a lot of talks on YouTube. I haven't done my second day of the John Maxwell for that series that I did, but I've listened to that before. And I think it's interesting how much backlash Mel Gibson got for his movie, The Passion of the Christ. And also they were talking about the experiences that they had on the set, some of the equipment failing, and how they had to pray for the equipment to work, the weather changing. So it's interesting to me. I never knew that religious films were not supported by Hollywood. I've never heard of it before because I grew up with watching like the Ten Commandments, the 1977 making of The Passion of the Christ. I never knew that Hollywood had so much resistance to it, and that he had to put up his own money to make the movie and to get it done. So I learned a lot today. I watched at least 4 or 5 different clips about the different experiences people had on the set, and his own interview that he did about that. So it was good to see, and I'm just going to get my cream to show you the cream that I made. So this is, I buy this unscented cream, and 6 years ago I started using this. I don't use it often, but I mixed my essential oils in there and I have very little left, so I'll have to make a new cream. But what the oils that I used in that, I put in 2 drops of bergamot, 2 of frankincense, 2 of lavender, and 2 of sweet orange. And why did I choose those oils? So 6 years ago, I didn't have a job similar to now. I was you go through a lot of different emotions: frustration, anger, depression, worry. And so that's why I chose the bergamot, because that helps with that. Frankincense is very healing and it's anti-cancer. It's also good, like when you're praying and meditating, to use frankincense. And lavender, it releases endorphins. And sweet orange is antibacterial. So that's why I chose those. Actually, it was 5 drops of lavender. So it's 2 of bergamot, 2 of frankincense, 5 of lavender, and 2 of sweet orange. And that tub has lasted me a long time because I use very little. You don't need too much of that unscented cream when you're using it. And that's what I used. But I enjoyed listening to Mel Gibson and also Zuckerberg. He was talking about how they tried to shut down AI and it started replicating itself. It's like that movie about the woman that they create a child for her, an AI child, and they can't shut it down, and eventually that robot is left in the bottom of the sea. So Zuckerberg is saying that we're going to be living in a world where AI is going to overlay the reality, and we might have one person on a job and the rest of the persons are going to be AI. They're not going to be real people. So I don't know what all of us are going to do for jobs unless we all become coders or learn about IT. And maybe companies will train us to do that. I don't know. And I applied to data annotation because they're looking for people to write scripts and to write coding. So I applied for that. Let's see what I get into. It's very interesting. But Mel Gibson's interesting. His interviews are interesting, and his take on it. And look how God blessed him. He put in all that time and effort and money, and he made millions, and Hollywood didn't want to support him. So I find that interesting, that whenever it's for us, whenever it's for the Christians, you don't get the support. Whether it's to do your training, like me, to become a spiritual director, or, to give retreats, or everything else, you don't get the support. You don't get the financial investment. And even on the calls, and when I grew up, I never grew up calling people nigger and coolie, and calling places that help me to masturbate, telling people, I'm paying you, just do your job, shut up. Telling people, even when I worked in HR, don't report things. If you report things, we're going to fire you. I mean, it's a whole new ball game here for me in Canada. But it's interesting, because when you speak up, when you tell them this is wrong, this is not the way to treat your workers, this is not the way that things should be, they don't listen. So for me, I'm happy that unions have been formed in teleperformance workplaces. When I was working at TD also, this was like 2007, some of the employees wanted to start a union in the bank because of how they treat us. Because the people at the top make millions, and the people doing the work have to take abuse, have to take discrimination, have to take being told, don't report it. I never grew up like this, and it's the innocent ones that get hurt, because I never grew up calling anybody a nigger or a coolie or whatever other derogatory name, and that's what the Americans do. And to me, it's not funny. I don't find it funny to be called a nigger or to be called a coolie or to be told, oh, go back to Zimbabwe. I don't find it funny. But they allowed it until I stopped reporting it. Because I was like, you know what, they don't care what I think. I'm not going to report it. Then other people started reporting it. And then they started putting some processes in place to say that, oh, you can hang up after you tell them 3 times to stop, or you can get a supervisor involved, or you can do these things. But for me, I was just expected to take it. When I used to tell them this is not right, they used to say, oh no, you have to show compassion for the caller. I was like, what compassion? So they can call in and bite my head off and swear at me and shout at me. So anyway, you see, that's how it goes. That's why I was telling them to find me a job in the church, or find me something that's going to be a better fit for me. And it's the same thing with the aid that they're saying that, oh, people are dying and all that. Well, why don't they deal with the corruption first? That's what President Trump is saying. Deal with the corruption. Because these people that they work in the non-profits, they get big salaries, over $70,000 a year. They live good lives. They can afford homes. They can live a comfortable life. And so, how much of that money actually reaches the people it's supposed to help? I saw that World Vision in Zimbabwe has actually raised a lot of funding in Zimbabwe that they're going to be using for their projects. So that's good. That's what they should do, because then they won't be dependent on the West and getting that money coming from overseas. So I take my hats off to them. It's good that they're doing it that way. And the Jesuits in Britain also did something. They also had a race and they raised money for their projects. That's good. I support that. That's what we used to do when I lived at Trinity House. We would do our own fundraising. We would have burger sales. We would have movie nights. We did a lot on our own and we raised the money. We were not dependent on the government giving us that money. And we did it as volunteers. But the reality is you get to a point where you get tired of always giving and giving and giving, and you're not getting anything coming in. You're not getting any money coming in. You also want to see your life change, and you also want to see yourself in a stable position with an income coming in. So I say it's good. And I enjoyed Mel Gibson's talk. And I'm like him, I don't believe in evolution. I don't believe in all these things. Just because they wrote the history books that way, or just because we're finding things and then the scientists are saying this is how it happened, it doesn't mean that it happened that way. For a long time they said the resurrection didn't happen, it never occurred, these men were delusional, they allowed themselves to be killed. That's what they were saying about Jesus. Until they proved that in that Shroud of Turin, they proved that the resurrection happened. So now, what they're going to do, go back and say, no, it didn't happen. And there's other things, there's books that have been written about how gold also, it leads to transformation. What about the transubstantiation? That's also been proven. So they can't go back and say, oh, it doesn't happen. They can't, because it's there now. So anyway, I enjoyed the interviews. They were very good, very interesting. And I like listening to Mel Gibson. I don't know why people found that movie so controversial. It's not like, you can't say it's anti-Semitic, because the Bible has existed for 2,000 years. You can't say that about the movie. How can they say that? So anyway, it's a good movie. It's a good way. And even this thing about, they were saying like human sacrifice doesn't exist anymore. Yes, it does. It exists in the drugs that they give us that cause women and men to become barren. Like I would have taken those drugs if I had accepted that report for the psychiatric treatment. Human sacrifice takes place in a lot of different systems around the world, in who you decide to keep poor and who you decide is going to get those good paying jobs and who you decide is going to get the money to travel so we can take our nieces and nephews out and spoil them and educate them. It's decided in that way. Just like people are making decisions for my life to keep me out of work, not give me jobs in the church, not give me opportunities in the church. And it's the HR director at the Archdiocese of Toronto. I told her, I want you to take my case to Cardinal Collins, because I told her, you're discriminating, because you're saying I don't have a job in the church. But how am I supposed to get a job in the church if you don't give me a job in the church? What about all my volunteering? What about everything I've done? Before, the priests used to choose the people that they wanted to work in the parish. Like Father Larry, when Maria got her position, it was through our secretary. Now they put everything through the HR director. So that's what they're doing here in Canada. Anyway, I just put my faith in God, and I hope that something opens up for me, because all the abuse and everything that I went through on those calls at Teleperformance and the emails and the chats, it affected me. And it doesn't just affect me, it affects many of my colleagues. Many people end up having anxiety, high blood pressure. In America, the call center work is protected. They're not allowed to do this, what they're doing to us in Canada. It's not right. Anyway, it's good that they got fined. It's good that they got caught. Here in Canada, if you report it, they don't do anything. The companies just carry on. It goes to the Americans, then the Americans catch them. That's why I'm saying it's good. Even in Europe, they formed unions. It's good. It's good. They must form unions. Because when we form unions in Africa, they're like, oh yeah, those people are backwards. It's good. They must form unions. I take my hats off to them. So, if you get an opportunity to watch any of Mel Gibson's talks and what he's saying, I would encourage you to watch them. He's a very good filmmaker, and I don't know, I mean, for me, I watched that movie, The Passion of the Christ, and it was violent, but there's a lot of films that are violent. I mean, they didn't want to give him the money because they're saying it's violent. What about the violence in all those other movies they make? Like Gladiator and all those other movies. It's just a rise against Christianity, that's all. That's all it is. If it was any other religion, he would have gotten all the support. Even this John Maxwell that I'm doing, they don't market it as Christianity. They just say that like, oh, he was a pastor and he wrote these books on leadership development and he's a New York Times best-selling author. It's Christianity. It's Christianity. And that's why the companies flourish when they actually listen to us and they adopt what we say. But they don't want to listen if you tell them that these are Christian values. They're like, oh yeah, you discriminating, we don't need this here. You should think about all the other religions. All the religions are equal. They're not. No, they're not. And then they want to bring Pachamama and do Pachamama ceremonies in the Vatican. Oh, please. That's why people like me have a hard time. Because if they read, even in the Vatican, we tell them, oh, we don't like it, then we don't like it, isn't it? It's our church. It's not for them to dictate to us. Anyway, today's scripture that I did was on mending the walls, and it was looking at the building of the city walls. If you look at that ancient descriptions that they had, without the wall, without that protection, everything crumbles. And even the roads that Jesus used to travel on, they used to have their homes built into the rocks. And it sounds impossible, but they did do it. Nobody knows how they did it, but it made for dangerous traveling, and that's why Jesus could relay those stories about the Good Samaritan and the man left to die on the side of the road and all that kind of imagery. So it was a good reflection for me to look at. And when I reflect, I also reflect on the building up of our spiritual walls, the time we spend in prayer, the times we spend reflecting about our prayer, our faith life. To me, those are also walls that need to be mended and that we need to spend time on. So this was a good reflection. It basically looked at Nehemiah and what the people did to rebuild those walls, and how it took them 52 days to rebuild a wall, which is a very short period of time. Sometimes rebuilding of things takes a long time, but when God is involved, the impossible gets done. Just like they couldn't stop Mel Gibson's movie, they'll never be able to stop the Christians. Doesn't matter how many of us they kill, doesn't matter how many of us they cause to lose our health. When they hurt us, they'll end up hurting everybody. That's what they don't get. So it's sad, but it's true. And I hope that Teleperformance will change their ways and think about what they're doing to the workers in Canada and the banks.